Two Navy aircraft operating out of the same carrier in the South China Sea have both gone down in mysterious circumstances. Is this really a case of bad fuel, as the president claims, or is there something more sinister at work from America's adversaries? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. But first, guys, of course, if you appreciate the honest content that I put out here and you want to support the channel, you can become a member over at combatvetnews.com. This is functionally my version of Patreon. And thanks to all you guys that do support me over there and get access to those exclusive members-only videos. Okay, so the Nimitz, an aging U.S. aircraft carrier, lost two aircraft within 30 minutes of each other in the South China Sea. This is crazy. So there are three crew members of a Seahawk helicopter that had to be rescued Sunday afternoon, and then two aviators from an FA-18 Super Hornet had to eject and were recovered safely. All five are in safe and stable condition. The causes of the crashes are under investigation. Now, President Trump, of course, on Air Force One, said the incidents could have been caused by bad fuel, and he ruled out foul play and said there was, quote, nothing to hide. But given the fact that there's lots of things that the president has been shown to be systematically hiding, we really can't trust anything he says. Remember, guys, there's also nothing in the Epstein files. So what really has gone on here? Well, the Nimitz is, of course, in the South China Sea, and this, I think itself... So the U.S. Navy is no stranger to poor management. Certainly, we've seen, for example, the guided missile cruiser USS Gettysburg shooting down an FA-18 launched from the aircraft carrier Harry Truman. In May, an FA fighter jet landing on the carrier went overboard after failing to catch the steel cables and forcing its pilots to eject. And these were during Middle East deployments. So that's a little weird, but this is vastly different because these two incidences are, one, missing a landing cable is problematic, but not unheard of for a fighter pilot. And of course, a friendly fire incident is, well, troubling, but not all that weird. That's actually part of the tactics used by drones to overwhelm radar itself and prevent air defenses from discerning friend from foe. So neither of those things are in themselves unusual. And they took place spread out by weeks. In contrast, this is two U.S. aircraft going down in basically the same circumstance, right, in the span of 30 minutes. And what I find interesting is, first off, that it's actually like if your aircraft goes down and in both cases all the crews survive, it says that there is something weird and specific about what's happening, right? Because if it were two separate mechanical issues, the odds that both of those failures would result in zero casualties is pretty minuscule. Even this, right? The fact that in, again, the case of the carrier, the FA-18 pilot that was shot down actually did manage to eject, and the FA-18 that fell into the ocean, that, again, was a predictable mishap from inside carrier. So I guess it's not absurd to say that, but here's what I think is most troubling, is that in the South China Sea, China has been systematically testing all kinds of new electronic warfare capabilities, right? For example, China has recently tested, this is an article from September, an AI-powered airborne radar system that achieved near-perfect tracking accuracy despite sophisticated electronic jamming. The adaptive cognitive radar represents a major breakthrough for the PLA in electronic warfare. Right now, China obviously loves to roll out new breakthrough technologies that it thinks are game changers, and they're not always prime time ready. But don't kid yourself. China works tirelessly to defeat America's electronic warfare capabilities and to achieve disproportionate effects. This is the idea that, China knows it cannot build its own F-35 to take out U.S. F-35s. It's simply too expensive and too technical. So what China looks for tirelessly is to find low cost but highly effective tools to render ineffective U.S. technology. And this is totally true in the case of aircraft, because the US has a multi-decade lead on China in manufacturing highly sophisticated fifth generation aircraft. And so China is investing tremendously in this electronic warfare technology arms race. For example, this is from just 2 weeks ago. China reported that one of its newest electronic warfare systems actually created spoofs. This is spoofing, making it appear on an adversary's radar that there were aircraft that were not real. It created imaginary, for example, it was able to project effectively an imaginary aircraft carrier onto the radars of some of these systems, right? Foreign surveillance aircraft, right, likely tracked these false radar signals, meaning that this technology was operationalized, at least according to the PLA. Now, the U.S. military has never admitted that any of its ships were tricked or misled. But again, it would never give China the data of saying, yes, China, you indeed did trick us, right? And so you are stuck wondering, I wonder when I see stuff like this, if maybe in addition to being able to spoof the radar signatures, perhaps there was some way to spoof a radar lock. For example, again, the FA-18 pilot that was shot down by friendly fire, well, he likely had some kind of notification that from his aircraft that it was being targeted by a missile and was able to eject before the missile destroyed the aircraft. What if China was able to spoof that signal as well that said, hey, FYI aircraft, you're about to be targeted by a surface-to-air missile, right? Then the pilots eject, right? The aircraft ditches in the ocean, and then lo and behold, there isn't actually a missile at all. And that would explain why using the same technology in a 30-minute span would create both pilots, because in the 30 minutes, they may not know that the first FA-18 had been spoofed. They may think that, yo, somebody really tried to shoot down one of our FA-18s, and now the helicopter crew says, damn, we're getting the same message that a radar is locked onto us. And so this technology would be incredibly difficult to counteract. It would require a huge rethink in basically all of the U.S. Navy's radar systems, electronic systems, and would be really disturbing if true. And certainly the U.S. military is not going to ever disclose to China that this technology was so effective that it actually caused 2 different U.S. pilots to simply bail. But the fact is that if this happened and the Chinese had something to do with it, well, it would be a huge problem for U.S. force projection, because a key part of China's goal in taking Taiwan is to blockade the island, is to cut it off from friendly U.S. forces. And China's strategy to do that is to effectively do what we would call deterrence, i.e. deploy weapon systems that don't necessarily have to destroy U.S. aircraft carriers. It simply needs to take U.S. aircraft carriers and keep them out of the fight, right? Keep them at a distance. They rely on precision ballistic missiles, for example, like the DF-21 series. But if they could evolve this kind of electronic warfare that says, hey, listen, if U.S. aircraft try to fly in any of these regions, they're going to be flying blind. They're going to constantly think they're under missile attack. They won't know if they really are. And it would only take a couple of real hits to get the U.S. Navy to stop flying in support of Taiwan. So now, I never discount simple flaws in technology, difficulties in operations. Who knows? Maybe this was a storm of the century in the South China Sea and made both of these aircraft have a really hard time landing. Who knows? But it is so troubling if this is indeed the actions of a U.S. adversary like the Chinese. Anyway, guys, hit subscribe for more. And of course, thank you to guys like Alfred Chesky Allen, that's in Christine Schumann, Dan M., Deborah Oppenheimer, and all of our Lieutenant tier members. The link's in the description. Please become members, support us, and I can continue to speak truth to power because you guys have my back. Thanks. Cheers.